In a few weeks, the Chancellor will set out his autumn fiscal statement. This could include changes to planned levels of education spending. So what is the current level of spending on schools and colleges, and how have they been affected by rising cost pressures? Starting with schools. Between 2010 and 2020, spending per pupil in schools in England fell by about 9% after inflation. This followed large rises over the 2000s, but a 9% drop in spending per pupil is the largest fall in school spending per pupil in at least 40 years. In recent spending reviews, the government has allocated extra funding to schools. This was expected to allow school spending per pupil to return to 2010 levels by 2024. However, the costs faced by schools have been rising faster than was expected. Teacher salaries are rising just over 5% this year, and support staff pay by more than 8% on average this year. On top of this, schools have faced rising energy and food prices. Once we account for these extra costs, we project that spending per pupil will stop growing this year and will still be about 3% below 2010 levels by 2024. Following a mini baby boom, the number of school-age children grew by 800,000 over the last decade. This is now going into reverse, and the number of school-age children is starting to decline. The pupil population is now expected to fall by 4%, or 250,000, over the next 5 years, and by a whopping 12%, or 800,000, over the next decade. This will reverse all of the increase in the pupil population seen over the previous decade. In principle, this could allow the government to maintain spending per pupil in real terms, but cut total spending. However, the government will only be able to realise savings if they are able to reduce the number of schools and the school workforce over the next decade. Turning to colleges and sixth forms. In the decade up to 2019, colleges and sixth forms saw some of the largest funding cuts across all areas of education. Spending per student in further education and sixth form colleges fell by 14% after inflation, and by 28% in school sixth forms. Colleges saw smaller cuts as they benefited more from the extra funding streams targeted at vocational and technical education. The government has sought to partially reverse these cuts by providing an additional $2.3 billion in funding by 2024 compared with 2019. While this represents a significant injection of additional funding over the next few years, the effect on per student spending will be dampened by rising student numbers and rising levels of inflation. As the previous boom in the school-age population works its way through the system, we expect student numbers to rise by over 160,000 or 17% between 2019 and 2024. Once we account for rising pupil numbers and inflation, we project the spending per student in colleges in 2024 will remain about 11% lower in real terms than it was in 2010, and about 27% lower in school sixth forms. These past cuts and further rises in student numbers will make it difficult to cut total funding for colleges and sixth forms. This work was funded by the Nuffield Foundation. To see more, visit www.ifs.org.uk/education spending.